GG Shaq here. I don't have any questions. I just want to say congratulations, young fella. You played a hell of a game, and if people didn't know who you were, they know who you are now. I'm so proud
Yes, sir.
of you.
Appreciate
Congratulations
you.
on
Thank
being
you.
ready, brother.
Well,
Yes, sir.
GG,
It's an honor to get to hear your voice. Appreciate you.
Hello and welcome to Hoops Royalty. I'm King Jimison, alongside, as always, my man in Cleveland, or currently New York, Karna Venkatrash. But today, it's not just the two of us. We have a special guest as well, also today alongside Sam Stack. Welcome, Sam. Sam works in the baseball information department for the Cleveland Guardians. Sources tell me that he's the one holding the place together. We all know that Karna is not. But Sam was also the manager for the Oregon Ducks basketball team, and he occasionally worked out with, guess who, Grizzlies fans? Dillon the Villain Brooks. So you'll hear all about Sam's time in the proximity of Dillon. And today we're also going to be talking some Warriors Grizz, or should I say trash talking, since Sam is a big Dubs fan, and the Grizzlies just pulled off a stunning and what I would call hilarious victory over the retirement home known as the Golden State Warriors. And sadly, we'll also have to talk the latest Grizzlies injury bug. That the list has just grown to a comical length that is inevitably going to doom this season, but we can feel good for one night. And we're going to do that at the expense of Sam Stack. But Sam, as we get going, with all that said, as a Warriors fan, just recap the season for our Grizzlies audience.
yeah, I mean, I'm not looking at this team anymore as a team that is going to get rings constantly. It's or consistently and like have playoff dominance consistently because they're older. They don't play as well together. They're a much sloppier team. They play much slower. They don't score in flurries like they used to, and the defense is not there at all. So they're kind of undersized. Like an old adage is, we may be slow, but we're also small, and that's really what the Warriors are.
Well, as Sam told us, it's been a really rough year to be a Warriors fan. It's probably been an even rougher year to be a Grizz fan, though. Let's be honest. Karna, last week, the subject of the pod was John Morant's season-ending shoulder injury. He's since had surgery to repair that torn labrum. And when we just thought things couldn't get any worse, well, they did, because the next day, in a really exciting win over the Dallas Mavericks, Marcus Smart, for the first time in his career, has 3 straight games of 20-plus points and promptly has a finger injury that will hold him out for at least 6 weeks. And then on Friday, the guy who's missed the fewest games all season, who's just been an absolute warrior, well, he gets the latest case of the Grizzlies injury bug as Desmond Bane goes down with a really nasty ankle turn. He's going to be out at least 6 weeks. And to be honest, given the severity of that one, I would guess even more, particularly if the Grizzlies are no longer anywhere close to the play-in. So, Karna, the Grizzlies are now down 4 of their 5 projected starters to start the season. What would you compare being a Grizz fan to this season? What's the metaphor we need?
So the metaphor, there's 2 metaphors. I'm just going to give one real quick. It's like your first year of teaching, right? Like a ton of setbacks, a ton of tough situations. Just you expect it to be one way and it ends up being just completely different. But there's these hopes and these little improvements from your students, and you're like, dang, we're actually getting somewhere. Even though it sucks mostly, we're getting somewhere. And not to mention, you could have a kid tear the labrum or twist his ankle in your classroom, and that's a problem too. But that's the analogy I'm going with. It's like your first year of teaching. A lot of setbacks, but a lot of silver linings starting to kind of pop up. Vince Williams Jr., now G.G. Jackson in more recent times. There is a lot of silver linings with our young guys, or at least 2 of our young guys. And a lot of development minutes that we're going to see. And something I've been going to all season is to see what we have approach. That is in full effect, full swing right now. And we will have a really, really good idea, a clarifying idea about what guys need to go and what guys are part of a championship run when Ja, Jaren, and Desmond are all finally healthy and can be playing together.
Which you brought up the stat last week about how little that's happened. But man, that analogy is too real. And I think my favorite part of it is those little moments that give you hope.
Yeah.
Like the win over the Mavericks on Tuesday, like the win over the Lakers the Friday before that. There's been these little moments where you're like, oh my gosh, it's all coming together. I can do this. And then all of a sudden it falls apart and you drop to a new rock bottom. Because as every supervillain and every superhero movie would tell you, you got to give them hope. That's when the pain can hit the biggest. But we're going to talk about some actual silver linings the Grizzlies can take away. But Karna, I'm going to turn it over to you. I hear you want to pepper your coworker with some questions while you've got him here in this unfiltered setting.
Yeah. Well, oftentimes when me and Stack are talking, it is unfiltered. If you want to check the Quiplash logs, I think both of us would have some serious problems. So I guess, for us as a Grizzlies podcast, one thing that, I really enjoyed hearing about your time is your time at Oregon, right? You're around a lot of really high performing athletes and, you get the chance to work with Dillon Brooks. Walk us through that. Talk about working with Dillon Brooks and just what kind of guy he was, because I know you have some good stories about him.
Yeah. So my first ever experience, like meeting Dillon in person, he left the year before I got to Oregon. So he was on that Final Four team in 2017 that lost to UNC. They had Jordan Bell, Peyton Pritchard as a freshman. They had Tyler Dorsey, who had a crazy March, Chris Boucher. So the team had a few NBA players. So those guys, when you're that type of guy in the organization, you kind of get like in the program, you get like a free pass to come back whenever you want. So the players would come back for periods of time during the summer and during the springtime. And that's when our workouts were not practice related or anything like that. So the first time he came back, it was we were running 5-on-5, and Dillon Brooks was there and Chris Boucher was there. They're both Canadian guys. They played with each other for a few years, and they were very obviously working on new moves because they were just both taking one-on-one step back threes. Little did I know that's actually how Dillon Brooks would play in the NBA.
To his detriment, yes.
Yeah, so that was the first time, and they're talking smack. They're going back and forth, and they're two very intense individuals, despite being like nice guys off the court. And they were just going back and forth, and it was really fun to watch, but also funny to watch because nothing was going in, and there was 8 other guys on the court who played D1 basketball who couldn't be like, dude, pass the ball, because they're all like 19-year-olds, and these guys in the NBA making much more money than them and much more successful than them, and probably pretty much like better than them as well. So that was the first time. I just thought that was cool because that was also my kind of first go around as watching NBA players come back and work out in the offseason. I didn't really have much exposure to that as much as I did at the end. So, and then Dillon came back. He came back. You know when he came back? The day after he signed his 3-year, $36 million extension. And I don't think if you've ever seen anyone lock into $36 million the next day after they do it, but they're probably like one of the happiest people on like the face of the earth. So he came in, he's all, bright-eyed and everything, and he was getting a workout in, and he's a really good guy, and he came back that whole week and got workouts with us all week. And lucky enough, I was the manager there, and I was one of the older ones, and I got to just pass it to him the whole time and watch how hard this guy wanted the gym, and he did. He went really hard because he came into school as a 3-star and became an all Pac-12 player. He wasn't even supposed to be good like he was. He worked on his body to get stronger, and he worked on his game a lot. And I remember watching him as a freshman compared to watching him as a sophomore or junior, and the leaps he took were crazy. So watching him work out like that in the way he did was really cool. And then we obviously got to, chop it up after and get to know each other. But he attacked every single workout like it was the last one, and that's what you need to, like, succeed in the NBA. And he ended up he gave me all his gear to go wash. I was like, oh, cool. Like, I'll go wash his gear, whatever. It was like a shirt, sweats, his shoes, whatever, socks. You throw it on a loop and you throw it in the wash and you do a run, and he's probably getting the lift in at the same time. And I brought him back his clothes, and he's like, nah, they're yours. Like, you keep them. So I have a pair of Grizzlies sweats, a Grizzlies basketball T-shirt that also fit me very well. So I don't know if you want to say that I have an NBA body, but I could.
You have an Emerson Elementary body.
I do have an Emerson Elementary body, or an East Florida body.
Shout out our Lakewood League, Lakewood Rec.
Company tournament body. But yeah, so he came back and he was a great guy, and I walked away from it like, wow, I thought he was just a really intense individual, but when he came off the court, he was really personable and like unlike what he is in the NBA or what at least what he portrays to be. He's a really laid back, just nice individual. At the end of the day, he is, and I don't want to play into the stereotype, but he's a Canadian dude who's like just gonna treat you well, but he locks in on the court and he treats people like the people he's playing as like his enemies, which is very cool because you don't get to see the other side of guys a lot. And but you could also when you watched him play and you watched him in pickup, you're like, oh, yeah, that's he practices how he plays definitely as well. And then I worked at Summer League a couple years later, and players don't often do this with guys like me, like managers, where they remember your name and you know where you're from, and we'll come up and talk to you. But I was interning at Summer League the year after I graduated, which was probably a year and a half after he worked out for that whole week with us, and I feel a hand on my shoulder. I'm like, what? Like, what's going on here? And I turn around, it's DB, and he chops it up with me for a few minutes, asks me how I've been, and you know what I'm doing there, and if he could help at all. And I was really impressed by that because you don't get that a lot with players who are you know trying to make it into the league. I've like seen guys I worked with before, and they acted like I was nobody. But there's few and far in between where he's like, you know, that's a good guy. And the thing about it, a majority of them are in the league. So I am a fan of Dillon Brooks. There's obviously the beef there and everything that happened with Gary Payton, and that was really unfortunate, but that's like the court Dillon Brooks. Off the court, he's much different. And I was really impressed with him.
That's awesome. I mean, I don't think anybody's ever questioned, number one, if Dillon Brooks is a hard worker. He clearly is. Like, the fact that he's such a good defender, he does not have the body to be a great defender. That is completely effort-based and studying tendencies. And I don't think anybody's ever questioned whether he's a good person off the court as well. And that's really great that you had that experience with him. So, honestly, I think that now that he's off to other pastures, they're definitely not greener. At least maybe they will be this season, but not in the future. But like, I can just be happy watching Dillon Brooks be a force for chaos on the basketball court. It's a lot harder when it's on your team and those pickup tendencies show up in like playoff games and call series, but that's really cool. And I've never liked Dillon Brooks more than after the story you just shared. That he seems like a nice guy.
Yeah, definitely.
That's awesome. So I think you mentioned a couple of hoopers that you've been around that have been, you know, just elite guys, right? Like not only in the Pac-12, but, you know, transition into the NBA and our dudes there. So what are some common things that you've seen you kind of mentioned it before as like kind of a humble, but an absolute killer on the court. What are some of the common things that you've seen with like some of the best hoopers? Like what are some common threads you see with them? Even as a manager.
Consistency in their routine. I actually will give you an anecdote about Dillon Brooks that David Allman always brought up. Was that this was how Dillon Brooks stayed on the court. So at Oregon they really valued the recovery process, and Dillon Brooks would get his full recovery every day at Oregon, and he was like an Iron Man at Oregon. And they came into the league, and the same thing happened. You know, he played. I don't know how many times he missed a lot of games for the Grizzlies, but I don't think it was that much. He spent every day working on his body, making sure that he was good to go the next day, and that was a really important aspect because best ability is availability, and so he valued that, and I think other guys from Oregon, the league, also value that. And then another thing when they're on the court and they're training, it's also consistency, but it's attention to detail. Because if you're practicing the wrong way or you're doing the wrong things, it's going to show up. And Peyton Pritchard was one of those guys where he would notice little things that he wasn't doing or wasn't doing well, and then he'd build up a whole workout that he'd do every single day that would work and help him in the next season. So like going into his senior year, he didn't think he was very good at attacking the hoop or like getting to the hoop, slowing down and finishing. So every single day before practice, he'd get out there an hour early before everybody else and get me or another one of the managers, and we get a yellow pad, and he'd drive at us like 10 times from 10 different spots and have us just bump him with the yellow pad as hard as we can and foul him and foul him and foul him. And sure enough, the next season he's an All-American because he can finish everything around the rim. Chris Duarte was another one where he wanted to get better at his spot up shooting game and maybe one bounce shooting game. So he spent an hour after every practice doing the same workout and getting it done. It becomes muscle memory. These guys recognize what they're not good at and then focus on it and obsess over it. And I think that's another thing. Like a lot of guys you see in the NBA, and what makes a difference than a guy you see who's really good in college is that they obsess over the things that they're not good at and they get better at it. That was something that I saw with Chris, with Peyton, with Dillon, even guys who went and had success with in college as well. And then obviously other factors factor in, like athleticism, size, and stuff like that as to why you don't succeed in the NBA. But consistent and like attention to detail and working on what you're not good at, like to almost an excessive extent.
Yeah, awesome. So that was these are some awesome, stories and answers, man. This is just awesome.
Yeah.
So I guess the last thing I want to key on, let's transition, kind of get the overlap, right? Student managers a lot of times are like the lifeblood of, and they just get stuff done for NCAA level teams.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, they're such an important part of NCAA athletics. We even had one or two managers for rugby, and we weren't even a D1 sport. So that was, they were incredibly important. So all that's to say, let's transition to your fandom now. Let's talk about the development of Jonathan Kuminga. How have you seen him develop over the last season, even develop in season? And what do you think his future is for the Warriors?
I'll just start off. I think they need to lock down Kuminga. I think that's just, there's a lot of talk around the organization. Obviously, all that drama came out this year, but he is, I think, valued. He's our best young piece. He's the guy who's developed the most. You saw it when you looked at Kuminga when he initially came into the league. He's like a bull in a china shop. You get these guys, like athletes like these, and it happens a lot in the NBA where it can go one of two ways, where the guy becomes, he's an athlete, he's a freak athlete, he brings energy, but he doesn't really have, dribble moves, can attack, triple threat, makes a lot of mistakes on offense. On defense, he fouls a lot, but he can stay in front of a guy and be a good factor. And Kuminga's still working on that. But I still think he's a good defender because of what he can do. How I've seen him develop so much this season is that he's developed the ability to finish 15 feet from the rim. He can rise up over anyone. He can get in the post and rise up over you. And now what he's really gotten good at is triple threat moves and making maybe one or two dribbles and getting to a spot and lifting and finishing. And that's something that he was attempting to do in seasons past, but you can see it's really worked out this season because the finishing is now happening. And I thought the same thing with Jordan Poole when he came out in his first year. He was going 4 for 13, and it was the 2020 team. They were tanking for Wiseman. Unfortunately, I was also on that tank. But he came out, and you're like, well, he's making all these good moves, but the shots aren't falling, so the shots will fall. Kuminga was kind of the same thing, and then everyone was pretty upset with him, and now he's coming out, and he's providing buckets. He's hitting threes. That's something he's also doing very well. He's hitting threes consistently, and then he brings energy up the floor, so you can get the ball out to him, and you can actually push it a little bit with Kuminga, and he will do that. He's our most athletic player by a mile, and he brings a spark plug, but when he brought the spark plug, he'd make so many mistakes while he did it. Now he's cut down on those. He knows what to do on offense, and he is getting better at defense, but fouls a lot, makes some mistakes here and there, but that's okay.
I think Kuminga is a really valuable piece, and he's shown in these last 3 games, 20-plus points in the last 3. But, Sam, do you have any worry that the Warriors are going to try to make some deadline move to try to get one last shot with this core, and that would probably necessitate moving Kuminga? Do you think there's a chance he's not on the roster come February?
Yeah, I think there's a chance. I don't think Dunleavy is going to do that. I don't think they're going to make any big trades like that because I think Dunleavy has come into this job, and I was talking about this with my friend the other day with Bob Myers. This is still very much Bob Myers' team. This is what he built, and I think Dunleavy coming into this job, he's finishing out with these guys, and then he's going to figure out the next era, and that will be the Dunleavy era. I don't think he's going to make any rash decisions, especially since we're a 10 seed team. We're fighting for the 10 seed, and at most we'll maybe get a 7 or 8 if they figure it out. Like their plethora of problems, but if he gets traded, it would be dumb, it would be rash, and it would be not for much because there's a lot of way better teams out there, and they're much more youthful. The NBA has caught up to the Warriors in youth. I mean, last year too. So I don't think they'd move him. If they moved him, it'd probably Pascal Siakam has been a rumor for years, and I don't think that's going to happen.
That'd be such a
I think if
room.
you're going to see a guy, moved, it's going to be Moody. Probably with like Clay for a guy, and it is what it is. Like you watch the team and you're like, this is over. Like the era's over. It's. I don't think there's a chance they win a ring again, but it's at least fun to watch a good team play.
Yeah, and you still have this belief that if Steph's on the court, then magical things can happen. I mean, that 2022 team should not have won a title, except Steph went superhuman, and they got some luck about who they played and who might have gotten injured in some of those series. Which
everyone says
of course,
that, but everyone else is undefeated in hypotheticals. So
no, that's true. I'm not calling it a fraudulent title. The Lakers in 2020, that was a fraudulent title. But I'm saying
everyone agrees on that one.
If the Warriors are making a move like that might include Kuminga, it's because they believe like if we just get in the playoffs, something crazy could happen. I don't know. Yeah, with Siakam on an expiring deal, like that's really this is the last bullet in your gun. You are going for it this year, and you have no future as a franchise. And I agree with you. I don't think a brand new GM is going to do that. But
I will say though, Dunleavy is someone who's going to want to make his mark. I don't think he gives I don't think he cares if he ruffles feathers by letting guys go. I wouldn't be surprised if this is Clay's last season as a Warrior. Like this guy wants to make his mark. He doesn't want to bask in Bob Myers and what he did. Yeah,
no. I think you're exactly right. I just think if he wants to make his own mark, a guy like Siakam, who no guarantee you re-sign him. I know that like the talks with Sacramento ended because he's like, I'm not re-signing for Sacramento. Sorry, guys. Like, I don't know if he would feel the same way about Golden State. Obviously, Bay Area is a better place to live if you have lots and lots of money, like an NBA player. But it is, it's still a franchise that probably doesn't have a strong outlook in the next 5 years. So, yeah. That would be like a last-ditch effort, and I don't know if they're going to do that. But let's transition to a little bit of Grizzlies talk. And in that, Sam, I still want to get your thoughts on kind of what you saw in today's game. So, guys, there's a whole lot of bad injury news we could talk about for the Grizz. We mentioned it earlier, but let's just focus on the game we just saw instead. Karna, I'll start with you. In the 116-107 win over the Warriors, Gigi Jackson has 23 points, his second straight game of 20-plus points, the youngest player ever to do that in consecutive games. And then Vince Williams Jr., after getting the extension, getting locked up on a 3-year deal, has 24 himself, was like oddly the creator for this offense, something that never thought he could do or would be asked to do. But are those two guys, VWJ and GG, is that your future Grizzlies wing rotation right there?
Look, I think there's a solid chance that it could be. They are definitely, here's what I'll say. I don't know if it's a wing rotation or those are the two guys that are going to lead this franchise in the future. Obviously, we have a solid young core with Ja, Dez, and Jaren. Here's the thing. All that aside, these two guys are going to play an important role in an eventual Grizzlies championship. And it's something that we've talked about pretty much. And it was actually a roll of the crate that comes up on my Facebook feed a lot. Is within the next 3 years, Gigi Jackson will contribute to a Grizzlies championship.
You did call that.
I'm feeling pretty good about my news of the. I'm feeling pretty good. About my roll of the crate. I think he's shown a lot. And there's one more stat I want to bring up. There are only 2 other players that to do this under 20 years old. Any guesses, King, Sam?
Oh, I got it. Yeah. So Sam, if you have a guess, go for it. But I saw the tweet too.
What to do? What?
20-plus points in consecutive games at 19 years old.
I think under 20 is what they said.
Yeah, or under 20.
I guess it's the same thing.
Jason Tatum?
It's LeBron and KD. Now,
That's a pretty good
I
list.
bring that up to make a point, though. It's been 2 really good games from Gigi Jackson. Let's not pretend like this guy is a flawless basketball player that won't need time to adjust when Ja, Jaren, and Dez come back. So just make sure, like, let's temper expectations, but we have a good core. This guy's only going to get better. One thing I love to see from Gigi was shooting the ball with authority, right? Now, are you going to expect him to hit 63% of three-pointers every single game? No, it's inhuman. But his ability to take shots and make shots were evident in a pretty big game in the FedEx Forum. And that is something that we love to see from a kid who's not even 21. He can't even drink. He can't even go to Beale Street after the game and get a drink. And he's just hitting big-time shots in a big-time atmosphere in the FedEx Forum, for those who can make it. So I love to see that from Gigi Jackson. At this point, Vince Williams Jr. is a known quantity, right? He is a solid defender. He's also going to get better as well. Both where I'd love to see more improvement is offensively, specifically shooting, but he's going to get better, and he's only going to contribute more to the team. So I love these two guys. They're going to be instrumental pieces in a Grizzlies championship, hopefully in our lifetime. But yeah, I'm super excited about these two guys, both their attitude, their on-court performance, and just the way they carry themselves in the arena and the confidence that they're playing with right now. Love to see all of those three things for guys that have been drafted within the last 2 years. Amazing.
Yeah, I'm going to throw in a quick royal decree here. My royal decree is that there is something good to come out of this hellish, horrific Grizzlies season, and that is you figured out the wing spot. Like, I don't know how you're going to go out and do better than 2 really young guys who seem to be willing to learn and seem to be willing to defer to better players in Gigi Jackson and Vince Williams Jr. And I think we know Vince Williams Jr. fits extremely well. But I think when you see how Gigi interacts with the other guys on the team, there is a natural respect there that you wouldn't usually see when established NBA guys are talking to the youngest guy in the league. And he's the only guy on the roster, right? The only healthy guy on the roster right now outside of Jaren, who I trust to go get himself a bucket, who can actually create for himself. And on a night where Jaren was terrible, Gigi filled that offensive void. And today it was the threes. And again, I'm not going to trust that at this point, but his ability to get to the rim is really exciting too. And then for Vince, I never saw him having a stretch of games where he had 19 against Phoenix last, I guess that was Sunday. And then he comes back with 19 and 24 in the last 2 games, or 17 and 24 in the last 2 games. So, like, I think we knew he was the hustle defender. I don't think we knew he could be any kind of volume scorer. But that's what he's become. And today he was in full grifter mode, getting to the free throw line over and over again. Sam, you might have had some thoughts about that, but just those 2 guys, Gigi Jackson and Vince Williams, what did you see from them? Probably not guys you were very familiar with before this game.
I had no idea who this I mean, I've heard Gigi Jackson's name probably from like looking at Tankathon and stuff and being like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
So seeing him today, I was like, oh, that's the team he's on now? Because it was in the first half he had like 14 points, and I was like, oh, okay. So the Grizzlies just went out and scouted really well again and got another guy out of nowhere. I was impressed by him, and the fact that he's 19 is very good. You see a lot of stuff like this in the NBA when you see a guy come in like a young wing like this, and you see the body, and you're like, well, we could do something, we could develop him. Kuminga's one, but and I don't want to get your guys' hopes up, but like it's a lot like Mikal Bridges when he was young. He comes in and he's a great defender, and you see the stuff that's building, and you see the building blocks that are there, and the development can happen. And the key to winning like a chip, in my opinion, especially with a team that the main point of scoring is the guy who lives in the lane like Ja, is you got to have guys on the outside. And Bane's one of those. He's been a benefactor of how good Ja is at getting to the rim. Jaren too. But if you have guys like that who can stay out there and, get back and defend and just be classic 3-and-D guys, that helps you win championships because then you can have guys guarding the other guy and let Ja go do his thing, and then you have Jaren down low. And that's going to cause problems for any team offensively because you have these guys playing great defense, and then they can spread the court offensively. So it's going to take time to fit in with Ja when he comes back, and Bane. Obviously, they haven't played with each other all year, but the experience they're getting now playing in the league, I will tell you that, right? Like, that's so valuable because a problem with guys the Warriors have drafted is they just don't get time on the court. And the 2020 season, while it was so difficult and like they sucked, so many guys got time on the court where they got really good. That's a big reason why Jordan Poole got so good, is because he saw what he needed to work on and what he had to get better at. Obviously, things changed a couple of years down the line, but that's a building block that you can have. So, and it's good that maybe they're 19 this year because they can come back next year. Or I don't know how old Vince Williams is, but they can come back next year and have a better game and all this experience on the court playing NBA players, figuring out how to guard them. It's a completely different game. So if they can spread the court, if they can play defense, that's really all you can ask for. And who knows, they can even get better and be, a third scoring option. Because I don't think Jaren Jackson should be your third scoring option. So.
Well, he goes in and out. He obviously today was a terrible day. Jaren had a stretch earlier this season where he had 40-point games in back-to-back appearances, and it's like he's got that in the bag, and then he's got 3 for 18 in the bag. So I see your point. I think if your top 2 scoring options are Jaren or John Bane, that's going to be such a heavy volume of your scoring. You're looking at like minimum 45 points a game on average, probably something closer to 50. And you don't need your third guy to be getting even 20 a game. And I think Jaren can get to that kind of mark. But Sam, you brought up a really good point. Like, people always talk about Steph, Clay, and Draymond, but there is no doubt that the Warriors have done an unbelievable job of identifying role players. And that's why it's been surprising that as the dynasty's fading, they haven't seen those role players develop in the same way. And I think that you're right. A big part of it is like they're trying to hold on to this last era, and that's really cutting young guys out of the rotation.
So this is one thing look, in our podcasting planning document, I don't mean to jump ahead. You asked the question, what do the Grizzlies still have to play for? So do you mind if we jump to that real quick?
Yeah, let's do it.
I have the answer. It's literally just what you guys were talking about.
Yeah.
Uniquely positioned the Grizzlies are to come back next year and have a championship caliber team with young guys that have played serious minutes against serious competition in the West. So that these development opportunities that these young guys have, and I know we're really focused on Vince Williams and G.G. Jackson during this conversation, but all of them. You get to see what you have, right? I've been preaching that all season, and I'll keep coming back to it because I will stand on my soapbox for that. But these guys are going to have to play in situations that are uncomfortable, where they're going to have to be a creator, or they're going to have to defer to a better player with Jaren Jackson Jr. on the floor. They're getting the full gambit of how to play without superstars, and it will be an adjustment when they come back. But these guys are getting valuable minutes against an important Western Conference competition that they will be seeing for the next 3, 4, 5 years. These teams are not going away anytime soon, right? Aside from like seismic shifts in NBA power and seismic trades, these are guys you're going to see night in, night out. It's better that they mess up this season, get out all the bad shots, get out all, throwing it 3 rows deep in the FedEx Forum. It's better they get all this out now than when we're in a serious playoff run. These are big minutes for kids that are 19 and 23-year-olds. And Roddy's like very young as well. All these guys are young players that are getting serious minutes in the NBA against Western Conference competition. One thing I want to caution us on, though, we've talked about development and we've used G.G. Jackson as kind of the last couple of games is really the spark plug for the team. We did have this case as Grizzlies fans in recent memory, right? Zaire Williams comes into the league. He's has a really, really good rookie season. We get excited. We see a sophomore slump. We see a slump even this year, even though we're hoping he would take, this step forward, and you and I, King, were super, super high on him coming into this season. So, King, I have a question for you, and this is going to be tough because I'm putting you on the spot. What differences do you see, even in the small sample size, between Gigi Jackson and Zaire Williams? One thing I could point to is maybe knee health, but take it away. What do you think's the difference there?
Gigi Jackson is an assertive scorer in a way that Zaire never was and never will be. Now, you saw that Zaire can be a helpful player when he's got superstars around him, because he's like the only guy left who has any bounce with no Brandon Clark in the lineup. So he provides that vertical spacing as a lob threat with Ja. And occasionally he's an okay shooter. He started to learn a little bit of the one dribble moves. Like if somebody runs you off 3-point line, what are you going to do? He can bury that mid-range jumper. But what he can't do is create baskets for himself and for others. And I think that's what they've been working on with him for 3 years. Gigi already kind of has that ability. Now, the passing, not there yet, but the ability to get to the rim and finish, because he's very athletic and just, I think, has been the featured scoring option on every team he's ever been on. He's got that. And I think his attitude will allow him to take that step back when other guys show up. But, Gigi's going to average like pretty solid chunk of points. I'd say something like 15 points a game the rest of the season in the games that he gets serious minutes, because he's like the only person on the team who's a go-to scoring option besides Jaren. And what's really exciting about that for me projecting forward is one thing the Grizzlies have never had, at least not in this modern iteration of the Grizzlies. And that's a bench flamethrower, a guy who can fill it up off the bench, provide that scoring spark. They've had a lot of very good bench players, but they're more finishers, like Brandon Clark, like DeAnthony Melton. They're not guys who go create their own offense when your starters are stagnant. And that's what Gigi Jackson may be able to turn into.
And I think that it's so, I have to really credit the front office for the Grizzlies, because seeing that in the sample size that we saw from college, which was a very limited sample size, is incredible projection to the next level, just based on what
and very bad. Like, let's just be honest, his stats in college were horrific.
They were bad.
But he was 17.
He was 17, but he also had like attitude problem, off the court issues. That's not the point.
Yeah.
The point is, it seems like the front office is building something way different than Zaire Williams. And I saw that comparison on Twitter. It did scare me a little bit, but I agree with you. I think he has a creation gene that Zaire Williams just doesn't have. So I take your point there.
And Gigi has already eclipsed Zaire's career high, by the way.
The tough look for Zaire Williams.
Yeah. Sam, let's get you another Warriors question, and then we're going to talk general NBA for a second and get out of here. But tonight, Warriors have 19 turnovers, give up 40 free throws in Draymond's return game. Not sure what you thought about the refs. I'm not going to give you a platform to talk about it either, because this was a rare game in which the Grizzlies had a positive disparity.
We don't want you to get fined. We don't want you to get fined
no.
in the NBA.
No, we're not going to go Mike Brown here. But
I really complain about refs, so don't worry about it. It's just a thing.
Wonderful. We do, but I appreciate that. You're a man of honor. If you had a magic bullet and could fix one thing about this Warriors team, and I'm not saying like you can go trade for Kevin Durant again, but like with the guys on the roster right now, what super ability would you give them that would turn them back into something closer to the Warriors of old?
Limit the turnovers, probably. That's been the problem every game. Today, I think it was like 25-9 points off turnovers, maybe more. You saw the Grizzlies kind of break away because Steph dribbled it off his foot. Another thing happened. They passed the ball away. Draymond tried to do a full court pass. Kuminga missed a shot. Next thing you know, we're down 106-96. And that's what's been bothering them all year. And they don't have the ability to come back like they used to. We played the Bulls last week, and there was 3 turnovers and like 30 assists. And that's, I mean, no, you don't usually turn it over 3 times, but that game they scored like 140 points. And Clay was shooting well, Steph was shooting well, Kuminga had 24. That's when you see the Warriors cook, is when they're not passing the ball around. And for a team that's so filled with all these stars and these guys. I mean, even Steph Curry and Clay and Draymond, and I mean, not that much Draymond this year, but they turn it over. They're so sloppy, and that's what they've been their whole thing this year. Is they're just bad at that. I mean, there's a lot of other things they could be better about, like defense and stuff like that. But I think just the ability to take care of the ball and value the ball, if they're going to be a half-court team, is probably the most important thing. It's infuriating sometimes watching these very experienced players dribble the ball off their foot or make a horrible pass.
Like Steph. He dribbled it off his foot in the backcourt, and like Vince was on him, but it's not like he was hounding him. And it was just shocking to see. But
I think
you make a really good point.
Sorry.
Just I wanted to point out one thing. Like they used to have a lot of turnovers, at least in the games where that I would be watching, particularly when they played Memphis, which was always a team that forced a lot of turnovers. But they played so fast, they were getting so many possessions in that it didn't matter. They were still getting a lot of shots up. And so the impact of those turnovers was lessened. And now, like you're saying, playing slow, playing in the half court, if you're turning the ball over 19 times, that's killing your offense. And you're not allowing the great shooters you saw on this team to get up enough to overcome that volume.
I think I agree with that. That's exactly the point I was going to make. It's the ability to come back in games, right?
Yeah.
I think we all, even when I was deep in my Rockets fandom, I think a 10-point lead never felt like a 10-point lead for when you were playing the Warriors. Now it does feel like it almost feels like a 15-point lead. And I think what's really scary is the decay of Clay has really been, because there's no secondary guy that can just fill it up, right? And I think that it's Steph Curry and some of the younger pieces are trying to fill a hole where a generational shooter used to be. Now we can mock Clay. He did the 1, 2, 3, 4 thing, whatever, man. Grizzlies fans hate Klay Thompson. I get that. He's a generational talent when it comes to shooting. And I think his decay and his step back is emblematic of why the Warriors can't come back with ease like they used to, right? You don't have two guys that can you just have to worry about it at all times because they can, Clay dropping 30 plus in a quarter. So, it's just, that is a really, really big sign to me that the Warriors, that almost sustained decline from Clay is one of the signs that maybe the Warriors don't just quickly rebound from this, and it's going to take a really concerted effort to rebuild.
Yeah, he was also a generational defender too.
Yeah.
And that really hasn't been the case since his slew of injuries. I don't even think in the 2022 title run that he was a great defender, but that used to be he was the quintessential 3-and-D guy. He was an all-star level.
Maybe the best to ever be considered a 3-and-D guy.
Yeah, because he really wasn't doing much off the dribble, but he was absolutely electric, catch and shoot, best in the game, certainly there, and an all-star level defender too. But let's turn to one more general NBA question before we get out of here, guys. So, Sam, Karna and I have been engaged in, well, we haven't been engaged. I mean, we are engaged in this podcast, but we have also been engaged in a debate all season about who will ultimately win the 2024 NBA championship. Before the season, I took the Bucks. Their defense has me very worried. The combination of Dame and Giannis on offense has me still sticking with my pick reluctantly. Meanwhile, Karna took the Celtics, and he's looking extremely smart right now. Of course, everybody took the Celtics. I mean, it didn't take a genius to identify that, even if Karna is one. But they have the best record in the league. Where do you stand right now on who should be the favorite to hoist the trophy in 2024?
Okay, well, I'll tell you, I'll give you a case for both of those teams, and then I'll give you a team that I think also can do it. Well, the Nuggets are good; they're in there. I think they're a contender. The Bucks. I mean, I went to Oregon for 4 years, 3.5. All my friends are from the Oregon area. They're like diehard Trailblazers fans. I learned about Trailblazers more than any other team. Dame is a phenomenal player. His defense will hold a team back, and you're seeing it with the Bucks. That's what I thought would happen this year. They have a first-year coach. So when they get to the playoffs, you're going to be seeing a lot of growing pains in terms of adjustments that he needs to make. I do think there's a little drama going on there. This is just me speculating, but the whole Drew Holiday thing, all that stuff that went down, that was really weird. Especially when they got Dame. I just thought it was a little weird. And then Terry Stotts left because he didn't like the head coach. That was also a little fishy. I think the Bucks can do it, but when you have a guy like Dame playing point and he has to lock up the other team's best player because they don't have Drew Holiday anymore, and that's what he did for that team, it's going to be difficult for the Bucks. They're going to be in there. They're going to be probably in the Eastern Conference Finals, but we'll see how much they actually can be successful. The Celtics at full health are probably the best team in the NBA and probably my favorites as well. They spread the court. They've re-identified themselves. Drew Holiday is now there. Chris Stapps he creates much more on offense than Robert Williams ever did. I thought that was a phenomenal offseason, and then it's showing up right now. They have a good bench, and I think that they're probably the best team. I know that the Bucks just played them last week, and the Bucks destroyed them, but that was the second out of back-to-back for the Celtics, and they didn't have Chris Stapps. I think it's the Celtics, probably the favorites, and I think a team that no one should forget about, and I think they are forgetting about them because the team has not been good for a long time, is the T-Wolves. I don't think people are talking about the T-Wolves enough. I think that team defensively has now figured it out, having Cat and Gobert on the court at the same time. Gobert is playing much better than he did last year for the team, and the main reason you know that is because you don't hear his name as much. When Rudy Gobert news is quiet, he's probably playing pretty well. And then they have that guy. They have the one guy that you're like, this guy could go on a run and take over a game and take over a series, and that's Anthony Edwards. So I think the Celtics are probably my pick. I'm going to root and hope that it's the T-Wolves because that'd be awesome. I've been Minnesota friend, and I am a big fan of Anthony Edwards.
I hate that team.
I like Anthony Edwards. I do not want the Timberwolves to be there.
I agree with you. I do. I definitely agree with you. I think, we are engaged. We've seen Cat. I think he's not going to be the guy on a championship winning team, and is the guy on a championship winning team. He scores in so many different ways. He's big, athletic, strong, fast. He was everything Zion was supposed to be. Leadership on 10. The guy's really, really good. And I love seeing him in the league. Terrible shoes, but really, really solid player and exciting to watch. I think one other team I think we should just talk about. I love this team. They are not an NBA contender, but they are a fun team, is the Pacers. I think, their deep run into the midseason tournament. They're fading now, but they had this like really, really good run, earlier in the season. Tyrese Halliburton, still great, a great player. Definitely not what he was earlier in the season. Miles Turner, another interesting piece. It's just a cool team to they're not going to, but they're a sneaky team. They can maybe win a couple rounds and you may see them in the Eastern Conference Finals. I don't think they have the firepower or sustainability to get there 9 out of 10 times. But, as we've learned with the Heat, it's not all about the 9 out of 10 times. Sometimes it's the 1 out of 10 time. So, something to think about. Just a team I wanted to throw out there.
Yeah, I would be shocked.
I love Tyrese Halliburton.
I do too. I would be shocked if any team in the East besides the Bucks and the Celtics in the conference finals. I think there would have to be a major injury to one of those two teams. I guess if the Bucks defense got exposed like it did in the in-season tournament versus the Pacers, it could happen. But one other team in the West that I got to see very up close and personal, as I discussed on last week's episode, was the Clippers. I think the Clippers have been kind of an afterthought for a long time, and every NBA fan is very hesitant. When you start hearing the talk of, when the Clippers are fully healthy, they're contenders. You're like, well, they'll never be fully healthy. But actually, we're seeing it at this point, and that team is crazy talented. Like, when you just think about having a team with Kawhi, Paul George, James Harden, and Russell Westbrook, and not to mention a pretty solid supporting cast, that team is never out of a game because they can try so many different combinations of lineups. They can play so many different ways. And I think you see Russ accepting his role. See, honestly, Harden accepting his role. We'll see if that lasts, because we know when things get too good with James Harden, the other shoe will drop. But yeah, I think that team is a legit NBA Finals contender. And I would currently put them in the Western Conference Finals with Denver.
What about the Thunder? You think they're a flash in the pan?
I'll ask Sam this. So you talked about the Timberwolves. Would you take them over the Thunder in a series?
Yes. I mean, Shea is probably the best scorer in the league, in my opinion. I don't think that he is the smoothest game out of anybody. He gets you to his spot. You could have a hand in his face, it goes in. So they have that guy. They have other supporting cast guys. I do think a young team like that, when they start to see like real defense in the playoffs and have to make adjustments and things like that, they might have some holes that show. This is their year before the year. I think next year is when you really see the OKC Thunder flash. Like, it's going to be the third year for Jalen Williams. You know, Shea's going to be ridiculous. It's going to be the second full year for Chet. And they have other guys too. They have a lot of good role players, but I just don't think that this is their year. I think they're going to be like the team next year, and we're going to be like, wow, there's no stopping this.
Yeah, I think I would take the Timberwolves at this point too, even though Shea would be the best player in that series. But the Timberwolves defense is insane, and I think that's a great point that they would probably frustrate a young team. But those two are definitely like, they're the 1 and the 2 in the West right now, and you know, if they were the 1 and 2 seed in the West, you'd probably still have well over 50% of the money coming in on the teams below them in the standings, particularly the Nuggets, and I would tend to agree with that as well. Like, somebody's got to show that they can actually beat Jokic. He's maybe playing the best basketball of his career. And until they do, I think the West runs through him.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, guys?
Rockets outside.
Stop.
I had a future on Asar Thompson winning Rookie of the Year. It's not looking as good as it did for the first 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Did look good those first 2 weeks.
Timberwolves big test coming up at Pistons, guys. Yeah, big test coming up.
I'm very upset about how bad the Pistons are. It really upsets me every day. I love Cade Cunningham.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's going to have to be a lot of bad habits undone. And I mean, like, winning habits, not necessarily things he's doing on the court, but like being around that much losing will do something to a guy. And hopefully, I don't like to say, like, get the guy out of Detroit or get the guy out of X city, because I don't think that that's how the NBA gets better. I'm saying, like, get Cade some help. Make it so it's a feasible NBA team. I guess they tried to do that with their trades.
To see Detroit be really good again. That being said, this is all their fault, right? Like, none of this is Cade Cunningham's fault, and he deserves to play on a team that's good. And I think the Pistons will be good eventually. They have to be, right? Things move in cycles. So I think I think we will see a Cade Cunningham on a good Pistons team within the next 4 or 5 years, but I mean, we'll see. I wish.
I got one more.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I got one more thing. It's NBA draft related. As we head into like more paying attention to college basketball, whenever you watch Kentucky, just look for a guy named Antonio Reeves' name, and then listen for Rob Dillingham. Those are the two guys where I'm like,
so fun.
They're going to be
story. My kids in Memphis loved Rob Dillingham, and they like would spend hours trying to convince me that Rob Dillingham could beat Damian Lillard 1-on-1, and I was like, no, just no.
He's unbelievable. I love watching him.
He's awesome. He's not as good as Damian Lillard, but he is awesome.
You look at Tankathon, it's a bunch of names you don't know, and then Rob Dillingham, and you're like, yeah, that's the guy.
Yeah.
We're going to be watching a lot of college basketball in preparation for this pod, because that's going to be the Grizzlies' main focus over the next few months, if we're being honest. Well, guys, that'll be it for Hoops Royalty today. Thanks so much for watching. Sam, thank you so much for being here. And however you engage with this podcast is wonderful. Please like and subscribe on YouTube, 5-star reviews and nice comments wherever you get this podcast. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell Grizzlies fans, tell Grizzlies haters, and also go out and follow Sam on all the social medias. He's doing fantastic work for the Guardians. Karna is doing mediocre work for the Guardians. Mostly seems to be collecting branded merchandise from data companies at this point, but good for him on that. But fellas, go Guardians, go Grizz, get home safe, Karna, and have a great night.